Hello everyone. Welcome to Dead Time Stories. I know many of you enjoy listening to these videos as you fall asleep. So before you drift off, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where in the world you're tuning in from. And if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, now let's get comfortable, relax, and dive into tonight's story. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting their sickly pale glow across the empty corridors of Briarwood Hospital. Emma adjusted her badge on her scrubs and stifled a yawn. It was her third consecutive night shift, and fatigue clung to her like damp clothes. She kept reminding herself that she needed the overtime pay, but each time she clocked in, the silence of the building pressed heavier on her chest. Most of the hospital wings were abandoned now. Budget cuts had forced sections to close, and rumors about the building's history had scared off patients. Briarwood had been erected in the late 1920s and was said to have been a sanatorium before it became a general hospital. Nurses swapped stories of lobotomies performed in the old psych ward, of bodies buried in the courtyard long before records were properly kept. Emma didn't buy into ghost stories. She told herself that what unsettled her most wasn't anything supernatural, but rather the decay of the place itself. Ceiling tiles sagged from water damage. Paint peeled in strips the color of nicotine-stained teeth. The smell of mildew clung to the stairwells. "Night 3, huh?" her coworker Tony said, leaning against the counter of the nurse's station. He had a paper cup of vending machine coffee steaming in his hands. Emma smirked. "You keeping track?" "Hell yeah. I want to see how long before you start hearing things." She rolled her eyes. "You mean like the boiler making noises, or pipes rattling?" Tony lowered his voice. "Or the crying down in the old psych wing?" Emma froze for a moment, her smirk fading, but then she brushed it off. "You're just trying to freak me out." He shrugged. "Believe what you want. Just don't go near the east wing alone." His words lingered in her mind long after she made her rounds. The hospital was far too big for the few staff left. Security guards dozed in their office, janitors kept mostly to the main floor, and doctors only came in when an emergency case rolled through. That left Emma alone on her floor, walking through echoing halls with her shoes squeaking softly against cracked linoleum. At 3:15 a.m., she stopped by the vending machine for a soda. As she fished for change, she heard it, faint and fragile, like a whisper carried on a draft. A child crying. Emma straightened, pulse quickening. She glanced down the hall. Nothing but the pale glow of the exit sign. "Hello?" she called. Her voice sounded far too loud against the silence. The crying stopped. Emma's throat tightened. She shoved her coins back in her pocket and turned away from the machine. Logic told her it was nothing, her imagination filling the silence, or maybe an animal in the vents. But logic faltered when she realized where the sound had come from. The East Wing. The abandoned psych ward. Emma lingered at the nurse's station, fingers drumming nervously against the counter. Her eyes kept flicking to the East Wing's corridor, though she couldn't see beyond the heavy metal double doors that led there. The psych wing had been closed for years. No power, no patients, no reason to go in. But the sound, it hadn't been her imagination. The crying had been too sharp, too real. She picked up the desk phone and dialed security. The line rang twice before a groggy voice answered. "Yeah? Derek, it's Emma. You guys doing patrols on the East Wing tonight?" There was a pause. "East Wing sealed. Has been for a long time." "Why?" Emma hesitated. She didn't want to sound like Tony had been right. "Thought I heard something. Maybe a kid." A low chuckle crackled over the line. "Only kids over there are the ones pushing up daisies. You hearing things already?" She forced a laugh, though her stomach twisted. "Guess I need more coffee. Get some rest when you can. I'll swing by later." The call ended, leaving her with the hum of the lights and the distant thrum of the building's ancient heating system. Emma shook her head and tried to focus on her charting, but she couldn't shake the way the crying had cut into her bones. Her rounds felt longer, each hallway more oppressive than the last. Shadows seemed to bend around corners a little too sharply, and the hum of the fluorescent bulbs grew louder until she wondered if she was losing it. By 4 a.m., her unease reached a breaking point. She stood at the double doors of the east wing, staring at the padlock that hung loosely on the latch. The chain wound around the handles was rusted, its links eaten away at the edges. "Don't be stupid," she whispered to herself. But the longer she stood there, the more she swore she could hear it again, faint sobs, like a child abandoned in the dark. Her hands shook as she reached out, fingertips brushing the padlock. To her surprise, it wasn't locked at all. The latch slid free with almost no resistance, the sound sharp in the silence. The chain slithered loose. Emma froze. Someone had left it unlatched. The doors creaked as they pushed open, revealing a corridor swallowed in darkness. No glow of exit signs. No faint buzz of lights. Just black. And from somewhere deep within that void came the soft scrape of movement, something dragging across the floor. Emma's breath caught in her throat. "Hello?" she tried, her voice trembling now. No answer. Only the scrape, and then, faintly, the crying again. Against all reason, she stepped inside. The air was colder here, heavy with the smell of mold and rust. Her shoes scuffed against debris scattered across the floor, fallen ceiling plaster, rotted papers, bits of broken tile. Her penlight beam cut a narrow path through the dark, illuminating peeling wallpaper and broken gurneys shoved against the walls. The sound grew clearer with each step. A child's sobs, echoing softly, always just out of sight. Emma's heart pounded, but she pressed forward, her voice cracking as she called out, "I'm a nurse. If someone's here, I can help you." That was when she saw it. At the end of the hall, half hidden in the shadows, was a figure. Small. Hunched. Shoulders trembling as though crying into its hands. A child. Emma's penlight quivered in her grip. "Sweetheart?" she whispered. The figure stilled. Slowly its head lifted. And though the hall was far too dark for her to see a face, she knew, down in the marrow of her bones, that the thing staring back at her was not a child at all. Emma's breath hitched as the figure lifted its head. The penlight beam wavered in her trembling grip, catching only fragments. A thin arm, pale and mottled. Hair hanging in lank strands across a face she couldn't quite see. A hunched posture that seemed unnatural, contorted. The figure shifted, knees scraping against the floor. The sound was slow, deliberate, like bones grinding against concrete. Emma's instincts screamed at her to back away. To turn, to run. But her feet wouldn't move. She stood frozen, penlight locked on the figure as it began to crawl toward her. "Stay back," she said, her voice breaking. The thing didn't listen. Its movements were jerky, too quick at times and then agonizingly slow, as if it was pulling itself forward with immense effort. The crying had stopped now, replaced by a sound that was far worse, shallow, rattling breaths that echoed like a dying patient's last gasp. Emma staggered back a step. Her shoe crunched over broken plaster, the sound deafening in the silence. The figure paused, head cocking sharply to the side as though it had just noticed her. Then it spoke. A voice, faint and high-pitched, but distorted, like a recording played backward. "Nurse!" The word made her blood run cold. Emma bolted. Her shoes slapped against the linoleum as she turned and sprinted back down the corridor. Her penlight beam jittered wildly, catching glimpses of torn curtains, shattered windows, the rusted skeleton of a wheelchair. Behind her came the rapid scrape of limbs dragging across the floor, faster now, frantic. She burst through the double doors and slammed them shut, fumbling to loop the chain back through the handles. Her hands shook so violently the links clattered like winged chimes. She forced the latch into place just as something struck the doors from the other side. The impact rattled through her bones. Emma stumbled back, gasping, her eyes fixed on the metal, watching it bend ever so slightly with each blow. Then, after what felt like an eternity, the pounding stopped. The silence that followed was worse. She didn't realize Tony had appeared behind her until he spoke. "Emma? Jesus, what are you doing?" She spun around, heart in her throat. He was holding his cup of coffee, steam curling lazily into the air. His expression shifted from irritation to concern as he took in her pale face, the chains still trembling against the handles. There was," Emma stammered, pointing at the doors. Tony glanced at them, then back at her. "You went in there? There was something in the hallway. A kid, I thought, but—" Her voice faltered. She couldn't even describe what she had seen. Tony shook his head slowly. "That wing's been empty for decades. Nobody in their right mind goes in there." "I heard it," Emma whispered. "It said my name." Tony's expression hardened, though she noticed he didn't laugh this time. He set his coffee down and leaned closer. "Don't say that too loud. You'll get people talking." Emma blinked. "Talking about what?" He looked at her, his eyes grim. "About what the others heard before they quit." Before she could reply, the overhead lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then the entire hallway plunged into darkness. The lights snapped off with a sharp electrical pop, leaving the corridor in smothering black. Emma's penlight was still clutched in her hand, the beams slicing a narrow tunnel of visibility through the dark. Her breath came fast and shallow, each exhale loud in her ears. Tony muttered a curse. "Not again. Damn breakers." He patted the wall blindly, searching for the switch as if it would magically fix things. Emma's focus never left the chained double doors. She thought, just for a moment, she saw the handles twitch, like something tugged them from the other side. Her knuckles whitened around the flashlight. "Tony," her voice quivered. "Relax," he said, though his own voice sounded less sure than usual. "This place loses power all the time. Give it a minute." But it wasn't the dark that set Emma's nerves on edge. It was the sound. From somewhere beyond the locked doors came a faint scrape. Then another, like fingernails dragging slowly down metal. Tony went still beside her, head cocked toward the noise. "You hear that?" Emma whispered. He didn't answer. The scraping stopped. For a long moment, silence pressed in around them, heavy as a weighted blanket. Then, from down the corridor behind them, the sound started again. Long, drawn-out scratches, closer this time. Emma whipped her flashlight around, the beams sweeping over cracked walls and broken signage. Nothing. The hall stretched out empty, but the sound echoed as if something unseen skittered just outside the circle of light. "Someone's here," she hissed. Tony's jaw tightened. He pulled out his phone, its weak glow barely illuminating his face. "No signal. Figures." The scratching came again, louder now, and followed by something else, laughter. Soft, high-pitched, and broken, like a child trying to mimic joy without understanding it. The sound bounced off the walls until Emma couldn't tell which direction it came from. Her chest tightened. "We need to leave. Now." Tony nodded, for once not arguing. They turned toward the stairwell at the far end of the hall, their steps quick, almost panicked. Emma's flashlight quivered over every shadow, expecting something to leap out. Halfway there, the laughter stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. Emma slowed, a chill crawling up her spine. "Tony?" she whispered. He was a step ahead of her, his shoulders rigid. "Keep walking." Then the air shifted. Cold swept through the hall, so sharp Emma's breath fogged in the beam of her light. The smell of rot filled her nose, wet earth and mildew, like graves disturbed. And from directly behind them, a voice rasped. "Nurser." Emma spun around, flashlight beam cutting through the dark. Standing in the middle of the hall, no more than 10 feet away, was the figure she had seen in the east wing. Its arms were too long, fingers nearly grazing the floor. Its head lolled to one side, hair veiling its face. Each word rattled from its throat like air forced through broken pipes. Tony froze. "What the?" The figure took a step forward. Then another. The sound of its bare feet against the linoleum was wet, sticky, like flesh peeling from bone. Emma grabbed Tony's arm. "Run!" And together they bolted for the stairwell. Their footsteps thundered down the hallway, echoing off the tiled walls. Emma's flashlight beam jolted wildly with each stride, catching glimpses of gurneys and wheelchairs shoved against the sides, their shadows stretching like twisted limbs. The thing behind them followed with no hesitation, its movements uneven but relentless, dragging, scraping, then suddenly darting forward with unnatural speed. The sound of it closing the distance sent panic clawing at Emma's throat. "Faster!" she gasped, pulling Tony's arm. They hit the stairwell doors, and Tony shouldered them open. The hinges shrieked in protest, the noise slicing through the night like a scream. They stumbled inside, nearly tripping over each other in their rush to slam the door shut. For a heartbeat, silence. Emma pressed her ear against the cool metal, her chest heaving. Then bang! The entire door shuddered as something struck it from the other side. Emma yelped, staggering back. "Go!" Tony shouted, already racing down the stairs. Emma forced her legs to move, clutching the rail as they barreled downward. Her flashlight beam flickered over stairwell landings smeared with graffiti, old stains that looked too dark to be rust, and walls cracked from decades of neglect. Behind them, the door rattled again. Then a new sound joined it, scratching metal, as though clawed fingers were working the hinges loose. Emma nearly missed a step in her panic. "It's coming through! Just keep moving!" Tony barked. His voice cracked, though, betraying his fear. They reached the basement level, the stairwell opening into a corridor lined with rusted pipes and dangling wires. The air was damp, thick with the smell of mildew and something sharper, like copper. Tony stopped, looking frantically around. "This way!" He pointed left, but Emma hesitated. Something about the basement felt wrong. The walls seemed to press inward, the air heavier here, as if the building itself wanted to keep them trapped. "We should go back up," Emma whispered hoarsely. "You want to run into that thing?" Before she could answer, the stairwell door above slammed open. The sound reverberated through the basement, hollow and final. Then came the dragging footsteps, slow, deliberate, descending into the dark after them. Emma's stomach dropped. She flicked her flashlight behind her just in time to catch a glimpse. The figure moving down the stairs, its pale hands grazing the walls, leaving behind long streaks of something dark. She choked back a sob. "Tony, go!" They sprinted deeper into the basement corridor. The floor was slick, forcing them to skid and stumble, their breaths ragged in the stagnant air. Pipes hissed overhead, releasing bursts of steam that clouded their vision. Somewhere behind them, the thing began to laugh again, high-pitched, stuttering, echoing endlessly down the hall. Emma's pulse roared in her ears. Every instinct screamed that they weren't just running from it. They were being herded. The laughter bounced through the pipes and vents, ricocheting in every direction until Emma couldn't tell where it came from. The basement stretched ahead like a maze, low ceilings, narrow halls, and doors on either side, most chained shut or blocked by collapsed shelving. Her flashlight darted from one to the next, searching desperately for an escape. "This way!" Tony hissed, grabbing her wrist. He tugged her through an open doorway, into what looked like an old storage room. Broken floor stands leaned against the wall, boxes of rotted linen sagged on the shelves, and a single gurney sat in the middle of the room, its leather straps brittle with age. Emma's stomach turned. "No. We can't stay here." "Just for a second," Tony snapped, pushing the door shut behind them. He leaned against it, his chest heaving. Emma kept her flashlight steady on the room, but shadows gathered thickly in the corners. "It followed us down. You heard it." "I heard," he admitted, voice low. "But whatever that is, it's not." His words faltered, as if he couldn't bring himself to finish. "Not human." Emma knew it too. The way it moved, the way it spoke, it didn't belong to anything alive. The pipes above them groaned, a low rumble like a warning. Then came the sound again. Scraping, slow and steady, right outside the door. Tony stiffened, pressing his weight harder against the wood. "It's here." Emma's grip tightened on the flashlight. The beam trembled as it lit the gurney, the cracked straps, the worn indentation where bodies had once lain. Her throat tightened. "This was the psych wing's overflow," she whispered. "They kept patients down here when there wasn't space upstairs." How do you know that? Tony's voice shook. Emma swallowed. My mom used to tell me stories about this place. She worked here before I was born. Tony's eyes flicked to her, wide in the dim light. She never mentioned this? No, Emma's voice broke. Just that people went missing sometimes. Staff. Patients. The scraping outside stopped. For a moment, the silence was absolute. Emma's heart hammered so hard it hurt. Then, slowly, the doorknob began to turn. Metal creaked. The hinges groaned. Tony slammed his shoulder against it, cursing under his breath. It's trying to. The door shuddered violently, as if struck from the outside. Dust sifted down from the frame, the wood splintering under the force. Emma's flashlight beam jerked wildly as she stumbled back. She knew the door wouldn't hold. Her eyes landed on the far wall, on another door, half hidden behind shelving. Its paint was peeling, the sign above it rusted beyond recognition. Tony, there! She shouted. He followed her gaze. His face twisted with dread, but he nodded. Together, they shoved the shelving aside, the old metal squealing across the floor. The second door revealed itself, warped with age but still intact. Behind them, the first door cracked, a hand forcing through the gap, too pale, too long-fingered, nails scraping splinters free. Emma screamed. Go! Tony roared, yanking the hidden door open. They plunged into the darkness beyond just as the storage room door gave way. The hidden door slammed shut behind them, plunging Emma and Tony into suffocating black. Emma fumbled with her flashlight, breath tearing raggedly from her chest. The beam flicked on, stabbing into the dark and revealing a narrow, descending passageway. The walls were bare concrete, slick with condensation. Rusted pipes lined the ceiling, dripping steadily into puddles that reflected the trembling glow of the flashlight. The air was colder here, damp, stale, and heavy with the stink of mold. Tony's voice was hoarse. Where the hell does this go? Emma swallowed hard. Maintenance tunnels. Or older. Older. The word felt wrong in her mouth, like something she shouldn't have said. Behind them, the hidden door rattled. Metal shrieked as claws, or fingers, raked across it. Then came the laughter again, muffled through the wall, but close enough to raise goosebumps along Emma's arms. Tony grabbed her hand. We move! Now. They descended. The tunnel sloped deeper underground, the air pressing heavier with each step. Emma's flashlight beam skimmed over old signage bolted to the wall. Letters faded nearly to nothing. Ward C, sublevel. Emma's stomach nodded. This isn't maintenance. This is part of the hospital. Tony glanced at her sharply. Sublevel? They had patients underground? Not supposed to, Emma whispered. Her mother's stories returned unbidden, rumors of experiments, of patients locked away where the public couldn't see. She had never believed them. Until now. The tunnel opened into a cavernous chamber. Emma swept the light across rows of iron doors lining either side, each with a small barred window at eye level. The walls were stained dark, streaked with age. Some of the doors hung open, their hinges broken, while others remained tightly sealed with rust. Tony's face went pale. Cells. These are. Not cells, Emma cut in, though her voice faltered. Isolation rooms. But even she didn't believe her words. The air shifted, carrying a faint sound that made her blood turn to ice. Voices. Whispering, layered dozens at once. Words she couldn't make out, echoing from every direction. Emma's flashlight sputtered. For a brief second, the beam dimmed, and in that instant, shadows seemed to lurch inside the open rooms, figures hunched, swaying, watching. No, she gasped, shaking the light back to life. The rooms were empty again. Tony's grip tightened on her arm. His voice was barely audible. We shouldn't be here. The whispers grew louder, converging into one phrase that shivered through the chamber. Nurse, come closer. Emma stumbled back, bile burning her throat. And from the far end of the chamber, one of the iron doors creaked open. Slowly. Deliberately. The sound of its hinges dragged across her nerves like razors. "Emma," Tony hissed. "Don't look!" But she did. Inside the doorway, something moved. A silhouette, slumped and twitching, its body bent at angles no human spine could bend. It crawled forward, dragging itself across the threshold. And Emma realized with horror that the thing she had seen upstairs was not alone. Emma's throat tightened as the silhouette pulled itself into the chamber. The flashlight beam shook wildly as she tried to keep it trained on the thing. It was wrong in every conceivable way. Its arms were too long, joints bulging at grotesque angles. Its jaw sagged open, slack and trembling, as if the muscles no longer worked. Every movement came with the sickening sound of wet bones shifting. And then another iron door creaked. And another. Metal groaned down the row, hinges shrieking in sequence like a grim orchestra. Shadows spilled into the chamber one by one, crawling, limping, dragging themselves free from confinement that should have kept them buried forever. The whispers crescendoed, dozens of voices overlapping, "Nurse, nurse, nurse," the word repeating until it felt like a chant vibrating in her skull. Emma staggered back, her breath shallow. "Tony, we have to get out." "No kidding," he rasped, pulling her toward the opposite corridor. But the creatures were faster than they looked. One lurched forward on its hands, joints bending the wrong way, moving like a spider with broken legs. Another slammed against the wall, head twitching violently, leaving dark smears along the concrete as it shambled toward them. Emma's flashlight caught a face, and she nearly screamed. Its eyes were sewn shut. Black thread puckered the skin where eyelids should have been. Its mouth gaped wide, stitches torn loose, and from its throat came a wheezing moan that didn't stop, even as it crawled closer. Tony yanked her harder, his voice breaking. "Don't stop, Emma!" They sprinted down the corridor, shoes slapping against the damp concrete. The whispers followed, echoing off the walls, growing louder until Emma's vision blurred with panic. Her flashlight beam swung wildly, landing on a sign painted in peeling red letters. "Morgue." Tony saw it too. "There!" They careened around the corner, nearly colliding with a rusted gurney that lay toppled in their path. Emma's shin clipped it, sending pain shooting up her leg, but adrenaline forced her forward. The corridor ended in a set of swinging double doors, their frosted glass panels spiderwebbed with cracks. Tony shoved them open, and the smell hit Emma instantly, sickly sweet, metallic, clinging to the back of her throat. The morgue. Rows of body drawers lined the walls, their handles corroded with rust. The overhead lights flickered dimly here, some failing altogether, casting the room in uneven patches of light and shadow. Emma's chest seized. "This isn't better! It's the only way!" Tony snapped, shoving a metal cart across the doors as the first of the whispers reached the threshold. They pressed themselves deeper into the room, surrounded by the silent company of the dead. Emma tried to slow her breathing, but her lungs fought her, panic clawing at every breath. Then came a sound that froze her blood. A metallic click. Emma's head whipped toward the nearest body drawer. Its latch trembled. Slowly, agonizingly, it slid open. Then another. And another. Drawers opening in sequence, the sound echoing like a macabre drumbeat. Tony's voice was a whisper of terror. "They're not empty." Emma raised the flashlight, her hand trembling uncontrollably. She almost didn't want to look, didn't want to confirm what she already knew. The first drawer slid open fully. Inside lay a body, skin gray and papery, stitched crudely along the chest as though someone had performed a clumsy autopsy. Its eyes snapped open, and with a sickening lurch it sat up. Emma screamed. Emma's scream tore through the morgue, but it was drowned out almost instantly by the metallic chorus of drawers sliding open. One by one, the dead stirred. Bodies sat up stiffly, jerking like marionettes, their joints popping as if resisting the motion. Some collapsed to the floor in heaps of brittle bones and graying flesh, while others dragged themselves free, landing with wet thuds on the tiles. The air reeked of rot and chemicals, formaldehyde clinging sharp to the back of Emma's throat. She gagged, stumbling backward until her spine pressed against the cold drawers behind her. Tony's voice was raw with terror. "Emma, We've got to move! But where? The morgue was a box, a dead end with only one way out, and the doors they'd come through were already rattling violently under the weight of whatever pursued them from the sublevel. The first corpse staggered forward. Its jaw hung slack, stitches snapping as its mouth gaped wide, black sludge dribbling from between its teeth. It made no sound, no moan or whisper, only the grotesque creak of tendons stretching where they shouldn't. Emma swung her flashlight wildly, beams slicing over more figures pulling themselves from their drawers. One skull was caved on one side, the other half of its face preserved in an expression of silent horror. Another dragged itself by its arms, its legs withered to nothing, nails screeching against the tile. Tony snatched up a metal tray from a counter and hurled it across the room. The crash echoed, startling the corpses but not stopping them. They continued forward, relentless, their hollow eyes fixed on Emma. "They're not alive!" Emma gasped, backing away. "They're moving enough!" Tony snapped, grabbing her wrist. He dragged her toward the far wall where a set of rusted double doors loomed, marked crematory in faded stenciled letters. Emma's stomach twisted at the sight, but anywhere was better than the morgue. They slammed through the doors into a chamber dominated by a massive incinerator. Its iron maw sat open, blackened with soot, the machinery around it groaning faintly as if still alive after decades of disuse. Ash coated the floor, crunching beneath their shoes. Emma's flashlight beams swept across the room, and froze. Handprints. Dozens of them, smeared into the soot along the walls. Small ones, large ones, layered atop one another in frantic clusters. All pressed outward, as though countless bodies had tried to claw their way free. Her heart lurched into her throat. "Tony!" But Tony wasn't looking at the walls. His eyes were fixed on the incinerator, on the faint glow flickering inside its blackened depths. "That thing's still burning," he whispered. Emma shook her head violently. "That's impossible. This place has been shut down for years." Yet the glow pulsed faintly, like the slow rhythm of a dying heartbeat. And with it came a low, guttural sound. A rumble that wasn't machinery at all. The incinerator exhaled. A blast of scorching air swept through the chamber, carrying the stench of charred flesh. The ash on the floor swirled into the air, stinging Emma's eyes and coating her tongue with bitterness. From behind them came the crash of the morgue doors bursting open. The corpses were inside. Emma turned in horror as they poured into the crematory, staggering, crawling, pulling themselves across the ash. Their whispers returned, louder now, blending into a singular voice that filled the chamber. "Burn with us!" The incinerator roared to life. The roar of the incinerator was deafening, a furnace flame that shouldn't exist after decades of disuse. The glow swelled, bathing the chamber in a hellish orange light. Ash swirled in the air like snow, settling on Emma's hair, her clothes, her skin, until she felt as if she were already being claimed by the fire. Tony grabbed her shoulders, his face pale and streaked with soot. "Emma, we have to move, now!" But the corpses blocked the way. They stumbled into the crematory in droves, arms outstretched, mouths open in silent invitation. Their bodies were cracked, burned, stitched, broken, yet every one of them lurched closer, surrounding Emma and Tony with suffocating inevitability. The whispers pounded in her head. "Burn with us. Burn with us." Emma staggered back, nearly tripping over the iron tracks leading into the incinerator. The heat rolled against her face, prickling her skin, making sweat bead along her brow. She realized with mounting terror that the furnace was breathing, expanding and contracting like lungs, each exhale washing over her in waves of suffocating heat. Tony ripped a rusted metal pipe from the wall and swung it at the nearest corpse. The impact cracked its skull, sending it collapsing to the floor in a heap of bone and dust. But three more surged forward, clawing at him with jerky, broken movements. "Emma!" he shouted, panic sharpening his voice. "Do something!" She swung her flashlight wildly, searching. Her beam caught on a control panel mounted beside the furnace, rusted dials, cracked gauges, and a massive lever corroded with age. Her heart slammed against her ribs. "The controls!" Tony followed her gaze. "Are you out of your mind?" The corpses pressed closer. Their whispers grew into shrieks, overlapping until the words were no longer distinguishable, only a wall of sound. Emma's head pounded, visions swimming. "We don't have a choice," she cried, shoving toward the panel. She slammed her palm against the lever. It resisted at first, fused with years of rust, but then it gave with a wrenching groan. The furnace roared louder, flames shooting out of its maw like a dragon exhaling. The heat intensified, blistering her skin even from feet away. The corpses shrieked in unison. Some staggered back, shielding their faces, while others lunged forward as if eager to embrace the fire. Their bodies convulsed as the flames licked outward, shadows writhing across the walls in impossible shapes. The entire chamber trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling. Somewhere deep in the walls, pipes burst with deafening bangs, spewing steam into the inferno. Tony grabbed Emma's arm, pulling her back from the blaze. "It's gonna blow!" The furnace wailed, an inhuman sound, part machine, part something alive. The glow inside turned blinding, white-hot, until Emma had to shield her eyes. The corpses screamed. Not with words, not whispers, but raw agony. Their bodies collapsed, skin peeling, limbs burning to cinders. The smell was unbearable, choking Emma until she gagged. Then the chamber erupted. The blast knocked Emma off her feet, hurling her against the wall. Her flashlight flew from her grip, clattering uselessly across the floor. She lay gasping, ears ringing, vision blurred by smoke and firelight. Through the haze, she saw Tony, slumped, coughing, blood streaking down his temple. And beyond him, where the furnace had been, there was nothing but a gaping black maw. A tunnel, revealed by the explosion. Its walls pulsed faintly, wet and alive, like the inside of something that had been waiting all this time. From its depths came the sound of children crying. The crying echoed from the tunnel, faint but sharp, piercing through the smoke. Emma forced herself upright, her arms trembling as she pushed away debris. Her chest ached with every breath, scorched air searing her lungs. Tony staggered beside her, coughing violently. Blood smeared across his face, dripping into the collar of his scrubs. His eyes darted toward the tunnel, then back to her, wide with disbelief. That wasn't supposed to be there." Emma wiped soot from her eyes, her voice raw. "It was hidden. Behind the furnace. They built it over something." The floor vibrated beneath them, subtle at first, then stronger, as though something massive shifted below. The corpses that hadn't burned completely twitched on the ground, charred arms reaching out blindly, still muttering fragments of whispers through split lips. Emma tore her gaze away from them, focusing on the tunnel. The crying continued, rising and falling in waves, dozens of voices calling out like a chorus of abandoned children. Her stomach knotted painfully. "We're not going in there," Tony rasped. "No way. No chance in hell." Emma's flashlight was gone, but the tunnel pulsed with its own light, faint, reddish, like veins illuminated from within. It seemed to breathe, inhaling and exhaling, the air thick with the coppery tang of blood. Her voice cracked. "If we stay here, we die. If we go back, that thing." She gestured toward the morgue doors, still rattling faintly, as if something stronger than the corpses pressed against them. Tony wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, his expression torn between fury and terror. He looked again at the tunnel, then at Emma. Finally, he nodded, a broken sound escaping his throat. "God help us!" Together, they stepped toward the gaping maw. Ash crunched underfoot, their shadows stretching unnaturally against the walls. The closer they came, the louder the crying grew, layered voices, some desperate, some mocking, all unnatural. Emma reached the threshold first. She paused, the heat from the furnace behind her colliding with the damp, clammy air rolling from the tunnel. She swallowed hard, heart hammering so violently she thought it might burst. Tony's hand brushed her shoulder. "On 3? She nodded, though she wasn't sure she had the strength to move at all. 1. His voice cracked. 2. The third number never came. Because from the depths of the tunnel, a child's voice rang out, clear, piercing, and horribly familiar. "Mommy?" Emma's knees buckled. The word struck her like a knife, because she recognized it. The voice wasn't just any child's. It was hers. The one she'd lost years ago. Her daughter. Emma froze at the tunnel's edge, the single word echoing in her skull. Mommy. Her breath hitched, sharp and painful, as if the air itself had claws. No, she whispered, her voice breaking. No, it can't. Tony turned to her, face pale beneath streaks of soot. What did you hear? Emma's lips trembled. She couldn't say it. She wouldn't say it. The memory was too raw, too deep. Her daughter's tiny hands slipping from hers that night, the hospital's sterile walls closing in, the helplessness when the monitors flatlined. That had been years ago. Years. But the voice had been hers. Emma's body swayed, legs weakening. She felt Tony's grip steady her, his voice urgent. Emma! What is it? Before she could answer, the tunnel's cries shifted. Dozens of voices layered atop one another, mocking and cruel, all twisting into that same fragile word. Mommy. 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 Emma's stomach lurched. She pressed her hands against her ears, but it did nothing. The voices were inside her head now, rattling her bones. Tony pulled at her arm. Don't listen to it. It's not real. Her eyes burned with tears. It sounded like... It's not her. Tony snapped, desperation cracking through his fear. His grip on her arm was almost painful, grounding her to the present. It wants you to follow. That's all. Don't let it. The tunnel pulsed with light again, red veins throbbing in rhythm with the voices. The air reeked of copper and rot, thickening with every breath. But Emma's grief pulled harder than Tony's words. What if, just what if, it was her daughter? What if the impossible had become real in this place where the dead crawled and shadows spoke? She staggered a step forward. Tony yanked her back, fury and fear colliding in his eyes. Emma! Think! That thing upstairs knew your name. Now this. You can't trust any of it. The voices cut off suddenly. Silence crashed over the chamber, so heavy it pressed against Emma's skull. Then, from deep inside the tunnel, a single child's sob echoed. Soft. Fragile. Real. Emma's chest cracked open with anguish. She wrenched free of Tony's grip. I have to know, she whispered. Emma, no! But she was already stepping into the tunnel, the fleshy walls closing around her, swallowing her into its pulsing red glow. Tony cursed, then followed, his footsteps echoing after her. As they disappeared into the suffocating dark, the crematory behind them shuddered. The blast-damaged walls groaned as if alive, and the corpses left smoldering on the floor began to stir once more. The hospital wasn't finished with them. It was only beginning. The tunnel closed in around them, its walls damp and pulsing faintly beneath the flashlight's trembling beam. Emma brushed her hand against the surface once, unintentionally, immediately recoiling. It was soft. Warm. Not stone or concrete, but something organic, like skin stretched too thin over muscle. She gagged, bow rising in her throat. Tony pressed close behind her, his voice tight with barely contained panic. This isn't a hallway. It's alive. Emma didn't answer. She couldn't. Every ounce of her will was focused on the sound ahead, the faint sobbing that had snagged her heart like barbed wire. Her daughter's voice. She couldn't let go of it, not after all these years of silence. The tunnel sloped downward, the air growing thicker with each step. The copper tang intensified until Emma swore she could taste blood at the back of her tongue. Her flashlight flickered, struggling against the oppressive dark, but the walls glowed faintly now, illuminating their way in dull crimson pulses. Tony hissed. Emma, stop. Just stop. She froze mid-step. His hand clamped her shoulder, forcing her to turn. His face was gaunt in the glow, eyes wide and desperate. Whatever's calling you, it's not your daughter. You know that. Her chest tightened painfully. You didn't hear it. You don't know. I do know. His voice cracked. This place, it's using us. It used your name. Now it's using her. You go chasing that voice, you'll never come back. Emma wanted to scream at him, to deny it, but the sob echoed again, weaker this time, fading deeper into the passage. The sound made her legs tremble. Her heart split open. She needed me then, and I wasn't there. Emma whispered, tears streaking through the soot on her cheeks. I can't walk away again. Tony's jaw tightened. And what happens to me if you throw yourself at whatever the hell this is? You think I'm just gonna leave you? His words cut through the fog for just a moment. She saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the raw fear, but also something steadier, loyalty, maybe even something more. Emma opened her mouth, but the tunnel quaked before she could speak. The sobs stopped. In their place, a sound swelled from the depths ahead, wet, gurgling laughter. It rolled through the tunnel like a tide, too big, too loud to belong to anything human. The walls pulsed violently, and with each throb, veins split open. Dark fluid spilled out, dripping down to the floor in rivulets that snaked toward their feet. The smell was unbearable. Iron and rot mixed into a stench that clawed at their throats. Tony cursed under his breath, tightening his grip on the pipe he still carried. It's leading us straight to hell. Emma's flashlight flickered once, twice, then went out. They were left in the living tunnel's glow, the red light throbbing in time with the sound of laughter that would not end. The red glow of the tunnel deepened, throbbing like a diseased heartbeat. Emma clutched the dead flashlight uselessly, her other hand brushing the slick wall for balance. Every time her fingers grazed the surface, it shuddered beneath her touch, as though something beneath the skin shifted. Tony walked close, the rusted pipe raised like it could fend off whatever waited ahead. His voice was low, ragged. This place doesn't want us to leave. It's pulling us deeper. Emma swallowed hard. Then we keep moving until there's a way out. But the words felt hollow even as she said them. The laughter ahead swelled, warping and bending into other sounds, snatches of conversation, whispers and familiar tones. Emma's breath caught as she recognized one voice above the others. Her mother. Emma, don't go down there. Emma froze, her knees buckling. The sound was so clear, so sharp, she half expected to see her mother waiting in the glow. Tony caught her arm, steadying her. What is it? My mom, Emma whispered. She worked here. She told me things about this hospital, about patients disappearing. I thought they were just stories. But what if she knew? What if she saw this? Tony's jaw tightened. Then she'd tell you to turn back. Another voice rose from the tunnel, this one fainter, cracked with sorrow. Mommy, please. Emma's chest constricted like a vice. She wrenched free from Tony's grip and stumbled forward. I hear her. She's in there. Tony cursed under his breath and followed. The tunnel twisted suddenly, opening into a cavernous space. The glow pulsed stronger here, casting jagged shadows along the curved walls. The floor was littered with rusted restraints, rotted mattresses, and skeletal remains tangled in shreds of hospital gowns. Emma's stomach lurched. There must have been dozens, no, hundreds, of bodies. Some still clung to their shackles, skulls bowed in eternal suffering. She raised her hand to her mouth, gagging. Oh my God! Tony's eyes darted wildly, scanning the chamber. This was never a hospital. Not really. It was a grave. The laughter returned, louder, deeper, reverberating through the walls until dust rained from above. And then, from the far end of the chamber, the bones began to stir. One by one, skeletal hands twitched. Skulls lifted. Empty sockets turned toward them. The air filled with the grinding of bone against stone as the mass of corpses shifted, pulling itself upright in jerky unison. Emma stumbled back, horror choking her. From the pile, a figure began to rise, larger than the rest, cobbled together from bone and rot. Dozens of arms fused into its torso. Skulls jutted from its shoulders, screaming silently. Its face was a shifting mass of fragments. One moment her mother's, the next her daughter's, then nothing but a grinning void. The whispers crashed together into a single, guttural command that shook the chamber. Stay with us. The abomination stepped forward. Emma's legs nearly gave out. The thing towered before her, its form writhing as though it could never decide what it wanted to be. Faces flickered across the shifting mass. Her mother's weary eyes, her daughter's soft round cheeks, strangers she'd never known, all twisting together in grotesque succession. Her heart seized when the child's face reappeared. The lips moved, and in a voice so achingly familiar, it whispered, "Don't leave me again." Emma staggered forward before she realized what she was doing. A hand, if it could be called that, extended toward her, skeletal fingers tipped with jagged nails. For a heartbeat, she saw not the abomination, but her daughter's tiny hand reaching for hers the night she died. Tears blurred her vision. "Baby!" Tony lunged, yanking her back so hard she nearly fell. "Emma! That's not her!" His voice cracked, raw with terror and fury. "You touch that thing, you're done." The monster lurched closer, each step shaking the chamber. Bone snapped and reformed in its body, a grotesque symphony of cracking joints. The whispers rose again, overlapping, hungry, "Stay. Stay. Stay." Tony raised his rusted pipe, his hands trembling. "We can't fight this." The mass of faces turned toward him, and in his father's voice, sharp, commanding, it snarled, "You were always worthless." Tony's grip faltered, his face draining of color. Emma realized with dawning horror, this thing wasn't just feeding on her grief. It was pulling from both of them, digging through their memories, wearing the voices of the dead like masks. She grabbed his arm, forcing strength into her words. "Don't listen. It's not real." But even as she said it, the thing shifted again, her daughter's face resurfacing. This time it screamed, a shrill, agonized wail that ripped straight through Emma's chest. Her knees buckled. Her body screamed at her to run, but her heart pulled her forward. The monster surged suddenly, faster than anything that massive had a right to be. Its fused arms lashed out, smashing through piles of bones, sending fragments skittering across the floor. Emma and Tony dove in opposite directions, the ground trembling beneath the blow. Dust and debris rained down, choking the air. Emma scrambled to her feet, heart hammering. Her gaze darted wildly, searching for any escape, any weapon, anything. The chamber stretched on in every direction, lined with the remnants of forgotten patients, their chains rattling as if stirred by the monster's presence. There was no way back. The only path left was forward. Tony's voice cut through the chaos, hoarse but fierce. "We don't beat it, we outrun it!" Emma's eyes snapped to a jagged opening on the far side of the chamber, partially collapsed but still wide enough to squeeze through. Beyond it, a faint draft stirred the air. She looked back at the shifting mass of faces. Her daughter's eyes stared at her, brimming with false tears. "Mommy, stay!" Emma's soul tore in half. But her legs moved anyway. She ran. Emma sprinted toward the collapsed opening, bones crunching beneath her shoes, each step threatening to send her sprawling. The draft pushing through the jagged gap carried with it the scent of earth, damp soil, roots, air that hadn't been touched by the furnace stink of the tunnels. It meant escape. Freedom. Tony barreled after her, his pipe clattering uselessly against his side as he ran. Behind them, the monster shrieked, a sound made of countless voices howling at once, grief and rage woven together into something inhuman. The chamber shook with its pursuit. Bones scattered like brittle leaves as the creature surged forward, its many limbs clawing against the ground, pulling its bulk across the chamber with terrifying speed. Emma reached the gap first. She dropped to her knees, scraping them raw against jagged stone as she shoved herself through. The rock tore at her scrubs, leaving streaks of dust and blood. Her shoulders squeezed painfully through the narrow opening, panic rising with every inch. She imagined the thing's clawed fingers seizing her ankle, dragging her back into the chamber. Tony pushed her from behind, grunting with effort. "Go, Emma! Go!" She gasped, pulling herself free, tumbling onto the other side. The tunnel here was tighter, the ceiling low, forcing her to crawl. She turned back, shining what remained of her flashlight's flickering beam just in time to see Tony squeeze into the gap. His face was twisted with effort, his skin gray with dust. Behind him, the monster struck. Its arms slammed against the wall, claws raking through the stone, sending shards flying. The opening shuddered, widening under the force. The creature's face pressed against it, a writhing collage of features, mouths gaping, whispering, screaming. Emma's blood froze. Tony shoved himself forward, gritting his teeth as the rock scraped his skin raw. "Don't look at it! Just move!" The creature's hand jammed into the gap, bones snapping and reforming as it squeezed through. Jagged fingers groped wildly, grazing Tony's leg. He roared in pain and kicked, his shoes splitting against the stone. The monster shrieked in fury, a sound so loud Emma's ears rang. The tunnel walls pulsed, veins bursting and spraying dark fluid that slicked the ground. Emma crawled faster, grabbing Tony's arms, yanking with all her strength. "Come on! Don't stop!" With one final heave, he tore free. The creature's hand swiped the air, narrowly missing him before the stone collapsed inward, sealing the gap in a spray of rubble and dust. The sound of the collapse thundered through the narrow tunnel, then faded into silence. Emma and Tony lay sprawled on the floor, gasping for breath, every muscle trembling. The faint draft still brushed against their faces, carrying cool, damp air that promised some way out. But Emma's heart refused to slow. The whispers hadn't followed them, the cries had ceased, yet she knew deep down. The hospital hadn't let them go. Not yet. The narrow tunnel stretched ahead, the faint draft guiding them like a breath from the earth itself. Emma crawled on hands and knees, the stone biting into her palms, her knees screaming with each shuffle forward. Dust clung to her hair and lashes, and every inhale burned with the taste of rot that clung even here, beyond the monster's reach. Behind her, Tony dragged himself forward with slow, heavy motions. His breaths came ragged, punctuated by quiet curses and the scrape of his pipe against the floor. Finally, when the tunnel widened enough for them to crouch, he slumped against the wall, his head sagging between his shoulders. "Jesus," he whispered, his voice raw. "I thought it had me. I felt it, its fingers. Cold. Like there was nothing inside them at all." Emma sat across from him, hugging her knees, the draft ruffling strands of her dust-caked hair. Her chest rose and fell in shallow bursts, her mind still caught on the voices, the faces. Her daughter's face twisting in that abomination's form. "It knew her name," she murmured, almost to herself. Tony looked up sharply. "Emma." She lifted her head, meeting his gaze with eyes red from smoke and tears. "It knew my daughter's name. That thing, it used her voice. It's not just pulling at random. It knows what to use against us." Tony's expression softened, though fear still lingered in his features. He shifted closer, lowering his voice. "Then don't let it. You survived losing her once. Don't let this place rip that wound open until you can't think straight." Her throat tightened. "You don't understand." He reached out, his fingers brushing her sleeve. "Then help me. Make me understand." Emma swallowed, the words clawing their way out. "She died here. Briarwood. My daughter." Tony froze. Emma's hands trembled as she pressed them to her face, the memory rushing back like a tide she couldn't hold back anymore. She was 5. Pneumonia. They told me she'd pull through, and then she was gone. I was working that night. I wasn't with her when... Her voice cracked, and she couldn't finish. The tunnel's silence pressed in, broken only by Tony's uneven breathing. Finally, he spoke, his tone hushed. "Emma. Christ. I didn't know. I swore I'd never step foot in this hospital again," she whispered, lowering her hands. "But I needed the job. And now it's like this place knew I'd come back. Like it was waiting for me." The draft stirred again, stronger now, carrying the faint smell of rain. A reminder that the surface was close. That escape was possible. Tony straightened, resolve hardening his features. "Then we get out. Whatever this place is, whatever it wants, we don't give it the satisfaction." Emma nodded, though her chest still ached with doubt. The voices had stopped, but she could still feel her daughter's presence lingering in the dark, a phantom tugging at her heart. She pushed herself to her feet, shaky but determined. Then let's end this. The two of them pressed forward, following the draft deeper into the tunnel. And far behind them, muffled by tons of earth and rubble, came a sound that froze Emma's blood cold. A child's laugh. The tunnel sloped upward now, the incline slight but noticeable. Emma's palms slipped against the damp stone as she crawled, her breathing ragged, her ears straining for any hint of pursuit. The laugh still echoed in her head, though she wasn't sure if it had been real or simply burned into her mind. The draft grew stronger. Rain. Fresh earth. The world above. It spurred her forward with desperate hope. Almost there. Tony panted behind her. I can feel it. Emma wanted to believe him. But the hospital had tricked them at every turn, dangling hope only to twist it into something cruel. The tunnel narrowed again, forcing them into single file, their shoulders scraping against the walls. The glow from the living stone had faded, leaving only their shallow breaths and the sound of dripping water ahead. Emma's flashlight remained dead, so the dark pressed heavier than ever, broken only by faint silver streaks seeping from cracks in the ceiling. Moonlight. Her heart leapt. She reached the end first, a jagged break in the stone, half blocked by roots and debris. Beyond it, she saw the night sky through sheets of rain, the forest bending in the wind. The storm had broken while they were below, but the sight of the world outside nearly brought her to tears. Tony! She gasped, reaching back. It's open! He shoved forward, his shoulder knocking against hers as they both clawed at the roots, tearing them loose, widening the gap. Cold rain sprayed through, washing soot from Emma's face, soaking her hair until it plastered against her cheeks. She pushed her head through, inhaling greedily the scent of wet soil and leaves. Fresh air filled her lungs, sharp and clean after the suffocating stench below. For the first time, she let herself believe they might truly escape. Then she froze. Through the sheets of rain, standing at the tree-line, she saw a figure. Small. Motionless. A child. The storm blurred its features, but Emma knew. Every fiber of her being screamed it. Her daughter. Her heart lurched violently, her throat choking on a sob. No, it can't be. Tony jammed his head through the gap beside hers, squinting against the downpour. Emma, what the hell are you doing? Move! But Emma couldn't. She was transfixed. The figure lifted one hand slowly, palm open in silent invitation. Come. The storm muffled all sound, but Emma swore she heard her daughter's voice anyway. Mommy. Her trembling hands tightened on the roots. She's there. Tony grabbed her arm, his grip iron. His voice was savage with desperation. It's a trick. You know it is. Emma, look at me. But her eyes stayed fixed on the small figure in the rain, her heart tearing itself apart. The storm thundered overhead, the forest bent, and the earth beneath the tunnel shuddered as though something massive stirred beneath their feet. Emma's choice loomed like the storm itself: escape into the rain, or reach for what she had lost. Emma's nails dug into the roots at the tunnel's edge, rain stinging her face, her eyes locked on the figure swaying at the tree-line. Every rational part of her screamed that Tony was right, that this was another mask, another lie, but the pull of that tiny silhouette was unbearable. Her daughter. Her little girl. Emma! Tony's voice cut through the storm, ragged with fear and fury. His grip on her arm was bruising now. If you go out there, you're not coming back. The figure lifted its head. In the flash of lightning, Emma saw pale skin, dark hair matted by rain, and eyes so heartbreakingly familiar she thought her chest would crack open. Mommy, the lips formed, though the storm devoured the sound. Emma's tears mingled with the rain. Her body strained forward. She needs me. Tony yanked her back so hard she slammed into the tunnel wall. That's not her. You think your daughter would want you dragged into this nightmare? You think she'd want you to die here? Emma gasped, torn between rage and despair. You don't understand. Tony's eyes blazed in the dim light. Then make me understand, because right now, I'm fighting to keep you alive while you're trying to hand yourself over to it. Another quake rattled the tunnel. Dust sifted from above, rocks tumbling around them. From deep below, the laughter returned, low, guttural, shaking the earth like a growl from the bowels of the hospital itself. The figure in the rain turned its head slowly, unnaturally, as if listening to that sound. Then it dropped its arm and began to walk backward, melting into the tree-line. Emma's heart tore open. "Wait!" She lunged forward, but Tony pinned her with both arms, forcing her back against the wall. His face was inches from hers, his voice a desperate rasp. "Emma, listen to me. If you follow it, you're gone. I can't lose you too." His words froze her. She blinked through tears, staring into his bloodied, terrified face. The weight of it hit her. He wasn't just afraid of dying. He was afraid of losing her. The earth groaned again, louder this time. The tunnel shuddered violently, stones cracking above. Tony's grip tightened. "We go now, or we're buried alive." The storm howled beyond the gap. The forest waited. The figure was gone. Emma's body shook as if torn in two. She closed her eyes. Her daughter's face burned into the darkness behind her lids. Then, with a sound that was half sob, half scream, she let go of the roots. "Okay," she whispered. "We go." Tony wasted no time. He shoved himself through the gap, hauling Emma after him. The rain slammed against their bodies as they spilled out into the storm, the tunnel collapsing behind them with a roar like the earth itself was sealing the wound shut. Emma lay in the mud, chest heaving, rain washing the soot and blood from her skin. The storm drowned the last echoes of laughter, but she knew deep down. Briarwood Hospital wasn't finished with her. Not yet. Rain hammered down in heavy sheets, flattening the tall grass and turning the earth to sucking mud beneath their feet. Emma pushed herself upright, her arms shaking, her lungs still raw from the smoke and heat of the tunnels. The storm was cold, almost shockingly so, biting through her drenched scrubs and numbing her skin. Tony staggered beside her, one hand pressed to his bleeding temple, the other clutching the rusted pipe he refused to let go of. He stared into the black stretch of trees ahead, his chest heaving. "We need to move," he rasped. "If that thing, whatever it is, can crawl its way out here, we're screwed." Emma's eyes darted back to the collapsed tunnel. The earth where they'd emerged was still trembling faintly, as though something far below shifted in restless sleep. Every instinct screamed that the hospital wasn't buried. It was alive, waiting, and they'd only escaped its grasp for a moment. She pushed to her feet, swaying. Her daughter's phantom voice still clawed at her mind, every echo like a needle piercing through her resolve. She hugged herself tightly, trying to hold the fragments of her heart together. Tony's hand touched her shoulder, steady despite his exhaustion. "You did the right thing," he said, voice low but firm. Her throat closed. "Then why does it feel like I just abandoned her all over again?" He had no answer. His eyes softened, but there was no comfort in them, only a quiet, painful understanding. The storm intensified, thunder cracking directly overhead, lightning illuminating the skeletal branches of the forest. For a heartbeat, Emma thought she saw shapes moving between the trees. Pale, long-limbed figures watching from the shadows, their heads cocked in unnatural angles. She blinked, and they were gone. Her skin prickled. "We're not safe out here." Tony nodded grimly. "Then we keep moving. Find the road. Find anyone." They stumbled into the woods, rain blinding them, mud sucking at their shoes with every step. Branches tore at Emma's arms, the storm swallowing all sound but their ragged breathing. Behind them, faint and almost drowned by the thunder, came a sound that made Emma's heart plummet. A child's laugh. High-pitched. Fragile. Drifting through the storm like it had followed her out. Emma froze, her blood turning to ice. Tony grabbed her wrist, pulling her forward. His voice was sharp, desperate. "Don't you dare stop now." She let him drag her deeper into the forest, but the laughter lingered in her ears, threading itself through the rain. No matter how far she ran, she knew it would follow. Because Briarwood wasn't finished. And neither was her daughter. Branches whipped against Emma's face as she stumbled after Tony, her shoes sinking into the sodden earth with every step. The storm was relentless, a wall of water crashing down from the heavens. But even through the roar of rain she could hear it, soft, intermittent, like a melody only she was meant to follow. Laughter. Childlike. Beckoning. Her lungs burned. Her body screamed for rest. But she pushed on, the terror of what lay behind them driving her forward. Tony moved like a man possessed, head low, shoulders hunched against the storm, every ounce of him focused on escape. Yet his hand never let go of her wrist, as if afraid she might vanish into the woods at any second. "Road's gotta be close," he shouted over the thunder, his voice ragged. "We just have to." Lightning split the sky, illuminating the forest in stark white for a single, searing heartbeat. Emma's breath caught. Figures stood between the trees. Dozens of them. Pale, twisted bodies stretching unnaturally tall, their limbs bending wrong, their faces indistinct blurs as though reality itself refused to hold them. They didn't move, didn't breathe, just watched, filling the forest like silent sentinels. Then darkness swallowed them again. "Tony!" Emma gasped, voice trembling. "They're here." He didn't stop. "Ignore them. Keep moving." But the rain wasn't loud enough to drown the whispers now. They came from every direction, curling through the trees, wrapping around her like cold hands. "Stay with us. Don't leave. Mommy. Mommy." Her knees buckled, mud sucking her down, her chest heaving with sobs. I can't keep running." Tony skidded to a stop, doubling back to haul her up. His face, streaked with rain and blood, was wild with desperation. "Yes, you can. Emma, listen to me. If you stop now, you're theirs." The ground trembled beneath them. Not like the thunder, not like the storm. Something deeper. A pulse, a heartbeat from below, shaking the roots of the forest. Lightning flashed again. The figures were closer. This time their faces had changed. Her mother's. Her daughter's. Dozens of faces she knew, all staring, all whispering. Emma screamed, stumbling backward, clutching her ears. "Stop! Please stop!" Tony grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him, his eyes blazing with fury and fear. "They're not real!" "I'm real. Me. Right here. Hold on to me, damn it!" And then, through the storm, through the whispers, came a new sound. A horn. Distant, low, but unmistakable. A car. Emma's eyes widened. "The road!" Tony's head whipped toward the sound, his grip tightening on her arm. "Move!" They tore through the trees, branches ripping at their skin, the horn growing louder, closer. And then the forest broke. They stumbled onto asphalt, the slick black road stretching in both directions, headlights cutting through the sheets of rain. Emma collapsed to her knees, sobbing with relief, as a pickup truck screeched to a stop in front of them. For a moment, she thought they might actually be safe, until she saw the driver's face, and recognized it. It was her daughter. The headlights seared Emma's eyes, but nothing could blur the face staring at her from behind the wheel. Her daughter, older than the memory she carried, but still impossibly hers. The same delicate nose, the same wide eyes, though they seemed wrong. Too still. Too perfect, as if painted on. Emma's heart wrenched. Her body moved on instinct, staggering toward the truck, rainwater streaming down her cheeks with tears she couldn't control. "Baby!" Tony lunged, catching her arm before she reached the door. "Emma, no! Look at it!" The girl's lips curved into a smile. Too slow, too deliberate, stretching wider than it should have. Lightning cracked across the sky, and for a split second the headlights flickered, just long enough for Emma to see her daughter's face collapse into something else. Hollow sockets. A mouth stitched shut. Skin pulled taut over bone. Emma screamed, jerking back against Tony's grip. The truck engine revved, deafening in the storm. The tires spun on the wet road, throwing water in every direction. The driver's grin widened as the horn blared, long and unbroken, vibrating through Emma's skull. Tony shoved her sideways just as the truck lunged forward. Its headlights flared, the horn shrieking. They dove into the ditch, mud sucking at their bodies as the truck tore past, vanishing into the storm. Emma's chest heaved, her body trembling so violently she thought her bones might shatter. She clutched at Tony, gasping. It was her. I saw her. For a second, it was her. Tony cupped her face, forcing her to meet his gaze. His hands were cold, shaking, but his voice was fierce. No. That thing wore her face, just like it wore mine. Just like it wore your mother's. Do you understand? It's not her. Emma's sobs shook her shoulders. But what if she's still here, Tony? What if I left her behind? Thunder rolled above, drowning out his answer. The forest behind them groaned, trees bending unnaturally as if something massive pressed upward from the soil. Tony dragged her to her feet, his arm firm around her waist. We can't stay here. Whatever it is, it's not done with us. We have to move. The road stretched endlessly in both directions, swallowed by the storm. No lights. No towns. Nothing but black asphalt and rain. Emma wiped her face with a trembling hand, her eyes darting to the trees where pale figures still lingered in the shadows. Watching. Waiting. She took one shaky breath. Then we walk. Tony nodded grimly. We walk. They stepped onto the empty road, their bodies beaten, their spirits frayed, but their feet carrying them forward into the storm's abyss. Behind them, from the depths of the drowned forest, came a sound neither of them would ever forget. A chorus of children's voices, laughing in unison. The storm swallowed them whole. Rain hammered the asphalt until it shimmered like black glass, their soaked shoes squelching with every step. Emma kept her eyes fixed on the road ahead, though it seemed endless, vanishing into the dark without a hint of safety on either horizon. Tony limped beside her, one hand pressed hard to his temple where blood still seeped sluggishly. The other still clutched the ruined pipe, though his grip was weak now, trembling. His breath came in ragged bursts, visible even in the storm's cold. Neither spoke at first. Words felt dangerous, as though acknowledging the silence might invite the voices back. Finally, Emma's voice broke the rhythm of rain. It wasn't just her voice. It was her face. Her smile. Tony's jaw tightened. He didn't look at her. That's what it does. It digs inside you and finds the wound that'll hurt the most. Emma hugged herself, shivering. What if it isn't just tricks? What if they're really there? My daughter. Your father. Everyone it showed us. He turned his head sharply, eyes burning through the sheets of rain. Don't let it plant that in your head. That's how it wins. But his words carried cracks, the weight of doubt he couldn't quite hide. They walked in silence again. The road was deserted, the storm unending. Emma's legs screamed for rest, but fear kept her moving. Every flash of lightning sent her eyes darting to the tree line, expecting to see those pale watchers. Sometimes she swore she did, motionless figures just at the edge of sight, their faces obscured by rain and shadow. After what felt like hours, Tony staggered, nearly collapsing. Emma caught him under the arm, hauling him upright. His skin was cold, clammy, his face ghost pale. You're bleeding too much, she said, panic sharpening her voice. I'll make it, he muttered, though his knees buckled again. Emma scanned the road desperately. And then, through the storm, a glow. Not lightning. Steady. Artificial. Lights. Her heart leapt. She shook Tony, forcing his head up. Look! Ahead. Do you see it? His bleary eyes lifted, focusing on the faint yellow glow just barely cutting through the sheets of rain. Hope flickered in his expression. A house. Or a station. Emma's legs surged with new strength. She pulled Tony forward, half carrying him. Her eyes locked on the glow as it grew brighter with every step. A building took shape in the storm, low, square, with a crooked sign swaying in the wind. An old gas station. Emma's chest ached with relief. Shelter. Light. Somewhere human. They stumbled under the awning, rain still whipping around them, but the glow from the flickering neon sign wrapped them like a fragile shield. Emma pushed the door open. A bell jingled faintly, drowned almost immediately by thunder. The air inside was dry, warm, and reeking faintly of antiseptic. Emma froze in the doorway, her stomach twisting. Tony swayed beside her, nearly unconscious. "We made it," he mumbled, collapsing against her shoulder. But Emma's eyes locked on the walls. The peeling paint. The rows of dusty chairs. The faded posters. Not a gas station at all. A waiting room. And behind the counter, a sign half obscured by shadows read, "Briarwood General Hospital, Reception." Emma's throat closed as her eyes scanned the room. The cracked linoleum floors. The rows of stiff plastic chairs bolted to the wall. A stack of outdated magazines slumped on a side table, their pages curled from years of damp. This wasn't a gas station. It wasn't even outside. The storm still howled beyond the door, but here, inside, the air carried that same sterile bite she had known all too well: antiseptic, bleach, faint traces of sickness that clung to hospital walls. Her body went rigid. No. No, no, no! Tony's weight sagged against her shoulder, nearly pulling her to the floor. His face was slack, lips pale, eyes fluttering open and shut. He didn't see it, not yet. "Emma!" His voice was faint, almost childlike in its weakness. "We made it!" Her stomach twisted violently. She shook him hard, panic rising like bile. "Look around you! Do you see it? It's the same place, Tony. We never left. We never left!" His head lolled, his eyes finally focusing on the posters peeling from the walls, smiling families beneath slogans about better care, brighter futures. His chest heaved. Christ! The bell above the door jingled again. Emma spun, her heart lodging in her throat. The door they'd entered now opened onto a corridor. White walls. Flickering fluorescent lights. A nurse's station visible at the end. Her station. Her badge still lay on the counter. Emma staggered backward, nearly dropping Tony. "It's circling us. It won't let us go." The air seemed to grow thicker, pressing against her lungs, as though the hospital itself was leaning closer. The hum of the lights grew louder, vibrating through her skull. From deeper within the hall, a voice echoed. High-pitched. Familiar. "Mommy, you came back!" Emma's knees buckled, her entire body trembling. Tears streamed hot down her cold, rain-soaked face. Tony's weak hand grabbed her wrist. His grip was feeble but urgent. "Don't, listen! Please! Don't!" But her daughter's silhouette appeared in the hall. Small, fragile, hair hanging in wet strands around her pale face. She stood barefoot, gown dripping as though she just climbed out of a grave, and she smiled with a sweetness so pure Emma's soul ached. Emma's lips parted, a sob catching in her throat. She didn't move toward the figure. But she didn't move away either. The hospital lights buzzed louder. The walls shivered. And somewhere above, hidden machinery groaned to life like an organ settling into rhythm. Briarwood wasn't a building at all. It was awake. And Emma was standing in its heart. Emma's body shook so violently she could hardly stand. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, each flicker sharpening the child's silhouette at the end of the corridor. The pale figure didn't move, just stood there, head tilted, smile too serene for the decay that surrounded them. "Mommy!" The voice whispered again, but this time it was inside Emma's skull. The word pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, soft and sweet, dragging her backward into memory, holding her daughter's small hand, brushing hair from her fevered forehead, hearing her laugh in the garden before everything went wrong. Tears burned down Emma's cheeks. She took one trembling step forward. Tony's weight dragged against her. He coughed, voice breaking. "Emma, don't. It's not her." She clutched him tighter, torn between the fragile body leaning against her and the fragile figure waiting down the hall. Her daughter's eyes, impossibly familiar, glowed faintly in the dark, brighter than the failing lights. Emma's breath came out as a sob. "What if it is? What if she's trapped here, Tony? What if I leave her again?" His hand found hers, icy and weak, but his grip was desperate. "If she's here, then you don't save her by walking into that." You save her by surviving. By remembering who she really was. Don't let this place twist her into bait. The silhouette tilted its head further. Slowly, its smile widened. Too wide. Its mouth split at the corners, stretching until the skin tore, black fluid trickling down its chin. The glow in its eyes sharpened into a cold, unblinking stare. Emma's breath hitched in horror. The figure took a step closer. Bare feet smacked against the tile with a wet slap. Tony groaned, sagging against her. We can't stay here. We have to move. Emma tightened her grip around his waist, forcing her shaking legs to move, dragging him toward the opposite end of the waiting room. Every step away from the child was agony, ripping her heart open wider, but the thing's smile only stretched, splitting its face as it followed. The bell above the door jingled again. Another door had appeared opposite the corridor where the figure stood. An exit sign glowed above it. Emma's throat closed. It's another trick. Then let's pray this one leads out, Tony rasped. The lights flickered violently. The child's voice rose in a shriek that rattled the glass in the frames on the walls. Don't leave me! Emma screamed and shoved through the new door, dragging Tony with her. They stumbled into blinding light. And the hospital was gone. For a moment, she dared to believe they were free. But the world outside wasn't the forest. It was the parking lot of Briarwood General Hospital, full, bustling, as though nothing had ever been abandoned. Cars pulled in and out. Nurses in clean scrubs hurried through the rain. Lights blazed in every window. And above the entrance, the sign glowed freshly lit, Welcome to Briarwood. Emma staggered into the parking lot, the storm still raging overhead, though the rain here seemed softer somehow, muffled as if falling through a filter. She blinked hard, disoriented by the sudden brightness of the hospital's facade. It looked new. The cracked windows were whole, gleaming with light. The faded brick gleamed freshly scrubbed. Even the peeling paint on the awnings had been restored. Nurses hurried between cars, laughing, talking. The faint smell of antiseptic and rain hung in the air, but not decay, not mildew, not rot. For one terrible moment, Emma almost believed it. Tony leaned heavily on her, his breath shallow. Are we back? His eyes roamed the lot, confusion bleeding into cautious hope. Emma's heart pounded. Her gaze caught on a nurse pushing a wheelchair across the asphalt, her umbrella tilting to shield the patient from the rain. The nurse looked up briefly, smiling at Emma as though she were any other staff member arriving for her shift. Emma's stomach turned. The smile was too wide, too fixed. Her voice cracked. No. This isn't real. Tony's hand tightened weakly on her arm. Emma, maybe it is. Maybe we made it back before all of it. Her eyes snapped to him, furious and terrified all at once. Does this feel real to you? Look closer. Another bolt of lightning slashed across the sky. For a fraction of a second, the illusion faltered. The cars in the lot warped, rust eating through gleaming paint. Nurses' faces blurred, mouths opening too wide as black sludge poured from them. The shining windows dripped red, streaking downward like bleeding eyes. Then the image snapped back, pristine again. Emma shook Tony hard. It's the same trick. The same damn trick. It wants us to believe we never left. Her chest heaved, grief and rage colliding inside her. She screamed at the building, voice hoarse and raw. Why? What do you want from me? The hospital lights flickered in unison, as though answering. The voices rose on the storm wind, hundreds, thousands, all overlapping. Stay. 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 Tony whimpered beside her, his strength nearly gone. Emma. I can't. She tightened her grip, pulling him forward even as her own legs trembled. Then we keep moving. I don't care what it shows us, we don't stop. They stumbled across the lot, rain soaking them, the pristine facade towering over them like a predator pretending to sleep. Emma's eyes darted to the glowing sign, Welcome to Briarwood, its letters flickering faintly now, glitching like broken neon. The storm cracked open with another bolt of lightning. And this time, the hospital didn't shift back. Its walls melted into rot and ruin, windows shattered, cars reduced to skeletons of rust. The nurses froze mid-stride, their bodies jerking violently before collapsing into heaps of ash that the rain washed across the pavement. The facade had dropped. And standing at the doors of the true, ruined Briarwood was the child again, Emma's daughter, or the thing wearing her skin. This time, it raised both arms, its voice cutting through the thunder like a blade. "Mommy! Come home!" Emma's body trembled, her chest caving under the weight of the sight. The child stood framed by the crumbling entrance, rain plastering her hair to her face, pale arms stretched wide in a grotesque invitation. Her voice rang with an eerie blend of innocence and command. "Come home!" Emma staggered backward, dragging Tony with her. His weight was heavy now, almost dead against her side, his head lolling. She shook him frantically. "Stay with me, Tony. Please stay with me," he groaned, his eyelids fluttering. "Can't. Emma, I can't." The child's eyes locked on her, impossibly bright even in the storm. "You can't save him. But you can save me." Emma's heart cracked, her knees buckling as she dropped into the mud. Lightning lit the sky again, revealing the child's face in stark detail. For a heartbeat, it was perfect. Her daughter, as she remembered, smiling softly, eyes full of love. Then the image twitched. The smile split. The eyes widened, stretching too far, glowing with sickly light. The voice dropped into a guttural chorus. "Come home!" The hospital groaned with the demand, its ruined walls shuddering as though alive. Windows shattered in unison, raining glass onto the pavement. The neon sign above sparked violently, then sputtered out, leaving only the storm's lightning to illuminate the horror. Emma pressed her forehead to Tony's, her tears mixing with the rain. I can't do this anymore." His weak hand fumbled for hers, gripping it with the last of his strength. His voice was a rasp, barely audible. "Yes, you can. Because if you give in, Emma, then she really is gone. Forever." Emma lifted her head, blinking through rain and tears. The child's figure blurred in the storm, flickering between her daughter and the twisted thing beneath. She realized then, the hospital wasn't trying to take her daughter. It was using Emma's grief as a chain. If she gave in, if she followed, she'd never leave. Emma's jaw clenched. She forced her shaking legs to stand, hauling Tony up with her. Every muscle screamed, but rage pushed her forward. She faced the figure at the hospital doors, lightning crackling overhead, and shouted through the storm. "She's gone! You don't get to have her! And you don't get to have me!" The child's face twisted, the smile splitting ear to ear, skin tearing as black fluid poured down its chin. Its voice shrieked, layered with 1,000 others. "Stay!" The ground cracked beneath their feet. The hospital's facade rippled, walls bending inward like a beast inhaling. The storm howled louder, pulling at them, dragging them toward the gaping doors. Emma dug her heels into the mud, clutching Tony with everything she had. "No!" she screamed. "I'm not yours!" Lightning struck the hospital's sign, sparks raining down. The entire building convulsed with a sound like a dying animal, groaning, cracking, shrieking. The child's figure flickered wildly, collapsing into static blurs of her daughter's face, her mother's face, and dozens of strangers before dissolving into shadow. The pull stopped. The storm fell silent. And Briarwood stood still, its ruined walls finally quiet. Emma collapsed to her knees in the mud, clutching Tony as the silence stretched. For the first time since her shift began, she felt the weight of the night ease, though she knew in her bones, the hospital wasn't gone. It was only sleeping. The storm broke just before dawn. The black sky softened into bruised purple, the rain dwindling to a mist that clung to the air like a veil. Emma sat slumped in the mud, Tony's head resting against her shoulder, his breath shallow but steady. The hospital loomed behind them, silent now, its windows hollow eyes staring out into the washed-out morning. The neon sign hung dead, wires dripping water like veins cut open. Emma couldn't look at it anymore. If she did, she'd see her daughter's face again, flickering in the glass. She'd hear the voices, the laughter. She pressed her hand to Tony's chest. His heartbeat thudded weakly under her palm, proof that at least one of them was still tethered to something real. The sun's first light broke over the horizon, bleeding gold into the fog. It painted the cracked asphalt and slick trees in soft glow, too gentle, too normal for the nightmare they had just crawled from. Emma forced herself to her feet, dragging Tony with her. Every muscle screamed, her knees shaking, but she kept moving, away from the hospital, away from its shadow. Each step forward felt like defiance. Half a mile down the road, the sound of an engine reached her ears. A pickup truck approached slowly, its headlights cutting through the mist. This time, Emma froze, not with hope, but suspicion. The truck slowed as it neared. A man leaned out the driver's side window, his face weathered, lined with years of hard work. He wore a raincoat, his eyes wide with concern. "Jesus Christ, you two all right? You're covered in blood." Emma's throat tightened. His voice was human, unlayered, real. She clutched Tony tighter, her voice hoarse but firm. "We need help." The man pulled over, throwing open the passenger door. "Get in. I'll take you into town." Emma hesitated for only a moment before helping Tony climb inside. She followed, collapsing into the seat, her body sagging against the worn upholstery. As the truck rumbled back onto the road, she dared to glance in the side mirror. The hospital was gone. Nothing but forest remained, mist curling around the trees as if it had never been there at all. Emma turned away quickly, her heart hammering. She pressed her forehead to the cool glass of the window, watching the road unspool ahead. She had survived. But in the silence between the rumble of the engine and the hum of the tires, she heard it again. A child's laugh. Soft. Fragile. From somewhere deep inside herself. Emma closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. She whispered into the rising dawn, a vow to no one and everyone. "I won't let you have her. Not ever." The truck carried them farther from Briarwood. But Emma knew the hospital wasn't gone. It was waiting. And it would always be waiting.